Well, this morning we continue a series, Where Are You, God? And what we've been talking about this is, where are you, God, when I'm stressed out, when I'm going through a difficult time, when I'm praying to you and I don't feel like you're answering me the way I want you to, when I want you to, how I want you to. Last week we talked about worry. We talked about, where are you, God, when I'm worried, when I'm not getting exactly what I want when I want. It seems like a pattern here of things where we struggle at times. I think all of us do, or maybe I'm the only one, that sometimes I wonder, where is God in the midst of this circumstance? Where is He when I'm going through this, when this is happening in my life right now? But I know that many of you struggle with this as well, because last Easter we had a cross up here and we invited you to write on postcards about things that you struggled with. And one of those things that you shared in that, in fact, there were 8 women, just to call out the women in the room, that struggled with being angry with their husbands. That there was some unresolved anger issues that they were struggling with. There was a whole group of men that were struggling with anger in another way. And unresolved anger that they were feeling towards circumstances and struggling with. And so there's all kinds of ways that this presents. In fact, in my own life, there's been moments where I can say I've kind of been ugly, where I've been angry over things that I shouldn't be angry over. I don't know if you've ever been angry over something you shouldn't be angry over. Have you ever experienced that, where I was just, I'll just be a little transparent here. There was a season where Adrienne had just finished her PhD, and then she got sick. And she got rheumatoid arthritis, and for those that don't know, it means chemo on Mondays, and she still goes through that. But the first 6 months, she lost the use of one arm, and had to help dress her in the morning, and put her makeup on, and for 6 months, she slept every weekend from Friday right through to Sunday. It was a really challenging time in our family. I was running a very large church with 59 people on staff, 500 people in our congregation, multiple sites, lots of things going on in my life and ministry. And now, when I just thought I got my wife back from her PhD, I'm now taking care of her. And when you get married, you sign up for that. That's what you sign up for. But when you live it, it's a little different, right? I mean, again, maybe I'm the only one that ever struggles with this. But let's pretend that some of you could also, when you're caring for somebody, find yourself in a place of feeling like, I wish this wasn't happening. You have to begin to grieve the pain of the circumstances that you're going through. You actually have to grieve the loss of the things you thought you were going to have in your life. And I remember kind of going through it and going, it's not right that I'm angry. Like, how messed up this is that my wife would be sick and I'm angry about it. Like, she's the one that should be angry about this. And she's doing fine. Why am I struggling with this? What's going on inside of me? And I had good friends that had a long-term disability in their marriage, and they had been going through this for like 25 years and in their marriage. And I remember them just sitting down with me and just having a really transparent talk and praying together and saying, look, Chris, the grace of God covers this one too. But you have to actually grieve this. You have to actually realize that there's a loss and that this could now be the new reality of your life. This is what it could look like for the rest of your life. And I remember kind of feeling like, wow, there's unresolved anger that I've got to deal with. And I don't know what that looks like for you. But I do know that many of you are saying to me, look, I struggle with this in all kinds of different ways. I struggle with unresolved anger towards God. I'm struggling with it towards my spouse. I'm struggling towards my boss at work or a friend or another relationship. I'm struggling with it towards my parents because of the way they treated me as a kid, because of what happened. There's just all kinds of issues that I know that we're bringing up this morning, and it's going to get quiet in here because this is one of those topics where I know it's heavy. And I just want you to know that you're not alone in this. That I too struggle with this in seasons of my life. That there are times where I've had to kind of go, hey, this isn't okay. The way I'm feeling inside isn't okay, and I've got to deal with it. But recognizing that you're feeling that way and realizing it, and when somebody else points it out, it's not super helpful, right? Because it's kind of one of those things where it's like, no, I've got to look in the mirror and recognize this. So I realize this is a real and raw subject. I know that there's going to be heavy hearts in this, but hopefully we can walk through this and get some healing and wholeness and health together on this issue. Well, this past week I had a great illustration of this for this sermon, and I thought, how perfect. One of the guys on my soccer team, I play in a men's old-timers league. It's a competitive league. Some of the men who are over 45 still think they're going to make the World Cup, even though they're not. Just to be clear, there's not even an old-timers World Cup that they could make. But somehow it's important that we win. And we do usually win. We have a great team. And so if there's any inclination that we're not going to win, some of my teammates just don't handle it super well. In fact, one of the guys on my team had somebody kind of knock them a little bit, and they got angry, and they got frustrated, and they told off the ref for not making the call, got super angry, and just kept losing their mind. And so they got a card. And well-deserved card. Not okay, what they did. And they just couldn't get themselves under control. And it didn't matter what we did or what we said. We're like, hey, let it go. I don't know what's going on from this week in your life, because clearly what just happened is not causing this. You are out of control. But he just could not get himself under control. In fact, everything the ref did from then on was wrong. It didn't matter whether it was right or wrong. It was wrong. And he started continuing to lose it on the ref. And we just couldn't get him under control. And finally, the ref actually said to him, look, man, I'm not going to give you a single call in the game because you've been so rude to me. In fact, I hate you. And I'm just going to call every call against you. So just keep quiet, or you're going to leave the field. So now the ref is clearly also angry. And that's not okay. And expressing it, and there's just some unresolved anger going on the field. And it's continuing, and they can't get it under control. And the sad thing is, this is kind of like a little example of what it can be like in our homes when there's unresolved anger. It doesn't matter what the other person does. We just constantly see what they're doing is wrong. And we begin to react before they've even done anything wrong. Because we've got unresolved anger towards them, and because we're not dealing with it, we're ready to pounce. We're just ready to attack and to go on the offensive and go after them. And this is exactly what was going on in this game, irregardless of how hard we tried to rationalize with him. This was a rational man. A guy that if any of you met him would go, he's a good guy. But he lost his mind. And so right or wrong, many people in life have lots of hurts, a list of hurts from the past, longer than Santa Claus's naughty and nice list. Look, it can be someone overlooked you for a promotion, someone hurt you as a child, someone made you look silly publicly, shamed you, judged you, stabbed you in the back, let you down, left dirty dishes out, heaven forbid, made noise coming to bed. Someone hit snooze 10 times and you had to actually get up and go and shut off the alarm. Someone left clothes all over the house. Someone spent more than they should. And that was your money. How could they? And someone prioritized their phone over you in the moment. Look, unresolved anger is like a balloon filling with air. Eventually, it cannot take any more without exploding. It just explodes. And usually it explodes over somebody nearby. Sometimes the intended target, and sometimes just somebody else that happens to be nearby. And sadly, sometimes that could be your children, or heaven forbid at work when it was actually intended to be at home. Or you do it at home because you haven't dealt with the unresolved issues at work, and so they're coming home with you. This causes all kinds of issues. One of the biggest things that I see is distance from other people. People have these unresolved anger issues and they begin to distance themselves. In fact, I often see this in a lot of good friends that are police officers that just deal with issues all day long and hard things in public, and they bury those things, the issues that they have to face every day in their job, or counselors that haven't actually shared the counseling that, I go to a counselor because of this, because I realize I've got to dump all the junk that I take on, and we tend to begin to distance ourselves when we don't do that from others. But we all do this in different ways. Others not wanting to get close to you. Distance from God, almost a feeling of being alienated from God because you're hardening your heart because of these issues going on. A distance from oneself, a lowered sense of self-worth, a feeling of I can't be worth much if others and life treat me like this. I see this oftentimes in young couples where a woman in the relationship often goes through this, and then all of a sudden in her late 30s to early 40s just kind of goes, I've had enough of this, and explodes. And just has kind of built this all up and realizes, look, it's not me, but I've got to deal with this. A distance from maturity. Unresolved anger freezes our emotional maturity where the offense occurred. So if you've ever met somebody, and you probably have, and you think that adult is acting like a child, that adult is acting like a 13-year-old teenager, why don't they seem to have the emotional maturity to deal with the circumstance and situation? It's because something happened when they were 13 years of age, and from then on, that's where they were stuck emotionally. They've never been able to actually mature into adulthood because that issue has never been resolved in their life, and they continue to stay in that emotional state at that age. You see this occurs. So here's an example in a marriage relationship. Dad says, get the quarter out of your mouth to his child. It was on the floor and full of germs. And mom cries out, don't worry about it. Even germs can't live on what your dad makes. Which, when you hear that, you're kind of like, that's crazy. Wow. But that's the kind of stuff we're talking about. It isn't necessarily that somebody attacks directly. It's these jabbing cuts from the side. And that's a lack of emotional maturity coming out. We see that all the time occurring in relationships. Gary Smalley, in your handout today, has an inventory called the Anger Inventory that can help you to determine kind of where you are on the scale of this issue. And it's going to go through a series of questions, and you score yourself, and you can cheat if you want. You're only denying yourself the truth. But it will hopefully begin to help you to kind of look at some of this stuff. And hopefully give you some keys to resolving anger from the message today out of some of the practical truth that Jesus teaches us about that we're going to get into. So let's get into some of Jesus' teaching here. How does Jesus deal with anger shown to him? So we talked about kind of us having anger and the issues there, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. But what about when it's expressed towards us? How should we be reacting? And that's kind of the primary story we're going to look at today in Matthew 12, 9 to 14. But before we do that, I want to just back up in that same chapter and look at the story just before the story. Because they're angry with Jesus for a reason. And when we look at the story, the reason that they're angry with Jesus seems ridiculous. I just got to say it. Just to all of us, it seems ridiculous because they're angry at Jesus that he's breaking the Sabbath. And all of us just kind of go, that's not a real reason to be angry. What I'm angry about is real. And what they're angry about is ridiculous and seems foolish. So I want to kind of walk us through that because the reasons for the anger might be more justified than you think. But we start off with the Pharisees. So what do we hear when we talk about the Pharisees? Da, da. We begin to hear the Jaws music because we know something bad is about to happen. So in Matthew 12, 1 to 8, the Pharisees are upset about a Sabbath violation, which to all of us is like, well, that's ridiculous. But the law made this very clear that this couldn't be done on the Sabbath. And it sounds ridiculous, but this was a big deal for the Jews, because the whole reason Israel went into captivity in Babylon was because they rejected the Sabbath. They were in captivity a year for every year they neglected the Sabbath. So you can understand why this was a big deal to them. It was a big deal because they were actually put into slavery over it. And they're like, you broke the Sabbath, and now I'm in slavery. That doesn't seem fair. And so they're watching Jesus break the Sabbath, and they're going, no, we don't want to go back to slavery. Stop. This isn't okay. Let me kind of help us in our current circumstances. Let's imagine that you're married to somebody who takes you off and moves you to a new place where people hate you for 5 years, mistreat you, make you do all kinds of work for them you don't want to do, and then you get to come back home, and now you're back home, and you find out that your partner is now behaving in the same way that they did that actually took you back to that awful place before. Are you mad with your partner? Yeah, fair enough. I think it's justified, right? And so this is what they're actually going through. This was one of the 10 Commandments, and Jesus appears to be breaking the Sabbath, which had severe consequences, already mentioned, for all of them, for the community to get exiled into slavery. They accused Jesus of farming on the Sabbath. Oh my goodness. By getting food to eat. Plucking wheat from its stem is reaping, rubbing the wheat in the palm of your hand is threshing, blowing away the chaff is winnowing. And this is what they're accusing him of, which again, we don't understand why it's so crazy to them. And Jesus responds with 2 scriptural examples of how the Sabbath can be modified for the benefit of people, and then declares that he is the Lord of the Sabbath, and that the purpose of any law has to be framed in mercy, that God always desires mercy over sacrifice. So the Pharisees want to stick to the letter of the law. They like the law because it sets clear boundaries for them to be in God's favor. And when someone breaks this law, they point the finger in judgment because they wouldn't do that themselves. And there's communal implications, consequences. They believe they're right, and the right things matter. Being right matters to them. Anyone ever feel like that?
No.
I am right! We could hold up a sign. Can you hear yourself in the Pharisees? I am right. Being right matters. My anger's justified. Your actions have consequences. None of us want to be the Pharisee in the story, do we? I mean, somebody else is the Pharisee. I always put myself as the good guy in the story. But I think here we might connect a little bit with the Pharisees. You and I might relate. But from the outside, we understand they're missing the point by feeling like the letter of the law is more important than the people involved. But they just can't see it. And I think sometimes, in the moment, we lose sight of the fact that the person is more important than us being right. When you're angry, is being right more important than the relationship? Is it? I mean, when we step outside of it, we go, no. But in the moment, most of us would say yes. We wouldn't cognitively say yes, but the rational side of our brain seems to get shut off, and we find ourselves in that place. The Pharisee behavior builds unresolved anger. That's what happens. Is feeling like, look, I was justified. I am right. What I'm doing is okay because I'm right. But that's what actually buries anger inside of us. And as a result, the Pharisees have serious unresolved anger towards Jesus. And we're going to see it play out in this next story. Now that you have the backstory to the story, let's take a look. Going on from that place, he, Jesus, went into the Pharisees' synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there, looking for a reason to bring charges. I mean, they're looking for a reason. That's what happens in our homes, isn't it? When we have unresolved anger, we're looking for a reason to accuse the person that we're angry with. We're looking for it. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus. They asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? They're setting him up. Remember this guy steaming at the referee, my friend, who frankly I could relate with? It could have been me on another occasion. And the game went on. The ref just couldn't do anything right. And he said to them, if any of you has a sheep, and Jesus begins to tell a story, a parable, because he's making a point to them. If any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will you not take hold of it and lift it out? How much more valuable is a person than a sheep? Therefore it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. He said to them, if any of you has a sheep, right? It's more valuable. But we can get so angry, we stop ourselves from even doing good to anyone near the person who we're angry with. It spills over to everyone else in the house. We can't even be kind, compassionate, or loving towards others because it just overwhelms us. And then Jesus said to the man, stretch out your hand. So he, the man, stretched it out, and it was completely restored, just as sound as the other. And all of us, when we look at this story, we go, well, clearly that's the good. That's the right thing to do. But the Pharisees went out and plotted how they might kill Jesus. Because the unresolved anger is so built up in them that it doesn't matter if what he's doing is good or right at all. They can't even see it anymore. In fact, what is shocking is there are two parties of Pharisees, and the majority party, of which this group is a part of, actually think you can heal on the Sabbath. They actually believe that. But now they're siding with the other group of Pharisees who don't believe it just because they're angry with them. They've changed their mind theologically in the moment because they're so angry with Jesus. How angry do you have to be to want to kill someone? Pretty angry, right? So the Pharisees have some seriously unresolved anger issues towards Jesus. They're looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. But what's amazing to me is Jesus' response. His ability to be true to himself completely despite everyone else's response. Jesus recognizes this, but won't allow their judgment and anger issues to dictate his actions and response. Jesus heals the man, and the Pharisees want to kill him for it. The reality is that my response is my responsibility. Someone, and we've talked about this in the crazy cycle from Eggeridge in the past, that when somebody acts unloving towards us, we usually act disrespectful towards them. And when they act disrespectful towards us, we act unloving. But if somebody doesn't get off that crazy cycle and go, no, I'm going to own my reaction in this moment. I'm going to not react unloving or disrespectful. Can you actually get off the crazy cycle in your relationship? And that's what Jesus does here. Going on from that place, he went into their synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand. We're just going to go back again through the story. Now we understand that Jesus is taught about mercy over sacrifice. So despite their seething anger towards him, he chooses the man over the law. Jesus takes responsibility for his response, gets off the crazy cycle with the Pharisees, and chooses to do the right thing in the hard situation, modeling for us a different choice. Looking for a reason to bring charges against Jesus, they asked him, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? They don't understand whether Jesus can heal, but they're so focused on their rules of how they can be in or out of favor with God that they just don't care. In fact, they don't even agree on whether the law states that someone can heal on the Sabbath or not, as they said. And so fear and anxiety have caused them to want to regain control. See, when people are angry, they tend to react in an over-controlling manner because they want to regain control. And so when things get on this crazy cycle, they go, no, I need control again. I need to get it back to where I need it. And so we react. What rules and values do you have in your life that when someone breaks them, you just start to get angry? What is it that causes you inside to react? And the question is, are those rules and values more important than the relationship? Because for most of us, as good-willed people, we choose the person over the rule or value every time when we come out of it and can rationally think through it. But in the moment, that's challenging. Don't break my rules. The house needs to be clean. Food needs to be ready, or whatever when I get home. The kids need to be quiet, well-behaved when I'm trying to do work or when we're out somewhere. Everyone should avoid my pet peeves around me. Wouldn't that be nice? I deserve a thank you. Don't they see? See how hard I'm working, sacrificing for them? Why don't they see it? Do we hear the Pharisee in our own words? Everyone needs to respond to my schedule because the implications for me is what's really important. Everyone needs to just follow the rules, but sometimes I have to break them myself because, and we can fill in the blank. It's like we have a different level of accountability for others. When people don't agree with my view, I generally assume they're wrong and should change or they need to grow. Why do we value rules over people, over mercy? See, our natural response for the majority of us isn't grace. It's self-protection, posturing, and judgment. It's Pharisee behavior. For most of us, our natural response is not mercy and grace. It's self-protection. It's posturing. How is this going to look to others? And then judgment of the other person and why they're wrong and we're right. And stuffing these feelings causes unresolved anger. There's all kinds of reasons why it occurs. But stuffing it just builds up. And when people get like this, everyone else has to walk on eggshells around them. Their behavior becomes erratic. And it becomes very hard to deal with. And when both partners end up this way, and think it's only the other partner that's acting this way, you begin to see greater and greater distancing in the relationship. Gary Smalley puts it this way. He says, look, there's a major destroyer on the loose. I found him to be the single greatest thief of one's love for life. The destroyer's forgotten, unresolved anger. Not just the kind that gnaws at one's stomach night after night, but also the type that quietly disappears. At least I used to think it disappeared. But when we bury anger inside, it is always buried alive. Eventually it comes out. So why do we choose bitterness like the Pharisees instead of mercy like Jesus? Who is our role model? Who is our role model? He said to them, if any of you has a sheep and it falls into a pit on the Sabbath, will he not take hold of it and lift it out? The Essenes, a stricter group than the Pharisees in Jesus' day, would have disagreed with Jesus, but even the Pharisees knew this was common sense, and that they still, even though now they agreed with them, they couldn't get past it. Like, I even agree that you're right, but somehow you're wrong. Jesus is using this how much more that we talked about from Matthew 6 in the worry passage last week to point out a value of people, that mercy trumps the rules, and that the inconsistency of their interpretation of the Sabbath rules is really what's on trial here. That people in relationship, love and mercy are more important than your rules. And Jesus was true to what was right despite the incredible pressure to follow other people's man-made rules. Despite the fact that everybody wants to kill him, he still goes, no, I'm going to do what's right and good. I'm going to be the mature one in this relationship. I'm going to get off the crazy cycle and respond appropriately. They don't continue to disagree and argue with him, fight with him. No, they plot to kill him. That's their reaction. And in their mind, this was okay because the death penalty was enforceable in Jewish law for breaking the Sabbath. Thankfully, the Roman law didn't allow them to actually go through with this, so this isn't the reason that Jesus gets killed. Otherwise, he would have died prematurely. But again, why do we choose this? Here's some practical advice. Let's walk through 4 pieces. Number 1, define what you're angry about. The Pharisees were angry about being exiled by God from their past. They were angry about that. They were still angry with God about it, and they were angry with one another for the behavior that caused them to end up in that situation. And that unresolved anger hadn't been worked through, and now they're taking it out on Jesus. So the first thing we have to do is take the time to look in the mirror and realize what the unresolved anger is in your life. The anger inventory can help with that. And maybe talking to somebody to define what you're angry about. Number 2, allow yourself to grieve if need be. Pray, read scripture, and consider journaling. The Pharisees didn't grieve their past. So they got angry and made up their own rules to maintain control. Even when they were like, no, I'm going to flip-flop on what the rules are because I'm so angry at this person. Sometimes what we're angry about is warranted or feels warranted. And it's very hard to separate the two. We were wronged or felt wronged. We have scars in our story to deal with, and we need to take some time to deal with them, or it becomes unresolved anger. And sometimes, as I said, for my own personal life, I know that sometimes, like, the other person hasn't even done anything. It's just our own hopes or dreams for the future of what we were going to have that cause us to not actually be able to get past it, and we have to work through that. Number 3, try to understand your offender. Release them from your judgment and own your response. This is where it gets hard. You don't have to justify their behavior. Hear that. Their behavior may not be okay. So you don't have to justify it to understand them. Just know that someone else's story is often complicated too, and their brokenness is going to hurt the rest of us at times, right? Because your brokenness is going to hurt other people at times. Broken people hurt people. That's the truth. And in the way that you're broken, you're going to hurt people. And in the way they're broken, they're going to hurt people. And broken people hurt people. So sometimes we have to actually set boundaries and guardrails to protect ourselves from repeat offenders. And that's okay. Sometimes you have to go, no, I actually need a boundary or a guardrail or something in place here to stop them from continuing to hurt me. That's okay. So we let the unresolved anger and judgment go because it isn't likely harming them, and it's destroying us from the inside out. Jesus had a mature response to their crazy cycle. He allowed his response to be his responsibility, and that's what we have to choose to do. When we're working through this, we have to go, look, I'm forgiving them. I'm letting this go for me. It's not about them. Maybe they don't deserve your forgiveness, but you're letting it go because it's hurting you. It's destroying you from the inside out. And finally, 4, we practice the Matthew 18 principle of conflict resolution as far as it depends on you. You go to them directly, you bring an unbiased mediator if you need to, and you take it to the church or leadership if it's at work or whatever the circumstance. But the idea is we don't do an end run and go gossip about all the issues to everybody else without going to the person first and talking to them about it. That's not okay. The mature thing is to talk to them directly. And then if we need help because it's unresolved, we can involve somebody that will help both of us, not just gang up on them, but will help both of us to resolve the issue. And finally, whoever the leader is in the circumstances, if it's at work, it might be a boss or something, then you bring somebody else in the church leadership. I mean, what if we could release every offense before it turns to anger? Would we sleep better, have better relationships, enjoy life more? Of course we would, right? Of course we would. So the question is, will we work through this? Will we release it? Will we let it go? Will we do the work that allows us to heal in a healthy way? That's God's desire for us. Let's pray. Jesus, oh, to be more like you and less like the Pharisees. I hate looking at a story and realizing I'm the Pharisee in the story rather than you. Oh, how I long to be you in the story. Able to be mature and respond in healthy ways. Oh, how I long to be you, Jesus, with mercy and kindness. Oh, how I long to be you, Jesus, rather than the Pharisees. Help us to resolve those things, that we might give mercy, that we ourselves want to receive. In Jesus' name we pray. And all God's people said, Amen. Amen.